Alright, so let's continue where we finished off, and let's just build our login.php. So this is going to be my PHP tag, this is my HTML tag, this is where I'm going to link. Let me just link this from the signup, so just I save some time. So I'm just going to save to link the styles nav and the signup. It's going to be the same styles. In my case, you don't have to be the same. So the styles for the sign up, I'm going to use it for the login. So I'm going to go to the styles in the sign up page, and I'm going to go create a file that is called styles login.css and give it all of these styles. And if we're done, now this is the time to include our let me just take it from there as well, include the nav bar and have this here. So this is the nav bar, and I'm just going to say that this is login, and let's add the JavaScript portion as well. So I'm just going to say script, I'm going to take it as well from there. Okay, so I'm just going to include that script here. Okay, so I'm just going to create another script that is called form validation JavaScript, but for the login page, and I'm going to create my form. Alright, so I'm just going to give it an ID since we want to grab it and do the same JavaScript validation that we have done from before. So I'm just going to give it an ID of validate, and I want it to be the destination for the values that I'm going to grab from there to be redirecting and following or going back to the same page that I'm in, that is going to be stored in the PHP portion up front here. So I'm just going to say the action is going to be the same login.php, and the method is going to be post. There's no different, you can make it lowercase, but I just want it to be like that. So I'm just going to be adding an input field of text. This is going to be having, let me remember, do I want to enter, I will ask him to log in using the username and the password. You can have it as email and password, or you can even let him log in using the username or the email. I'm just going to use the username, so I'm just going to call this username and make a placeholder of enter your username, please. I'm going to repeat the same thing here, but this is going to be the password, and I'm going to have the name of password, right? And this is going to be the type of password, and I'm going to have a hidden input field after each one of them, just to indicate to PHP that these values are ready, since we are validating using JavaScript. And this is going to be named as just like before. This is nothing different here, it's the same stuff from before. I'm just going to copy this here, and right after it, I'm going to add a div that is going to be having the class of danger, right, which is going to be having a paragraph, right, which is going to be echoing any errors that we are going to receive from our error associative arrays that I'm going to create in just a minute, right? So we're going to have a key for the username and a key for the password, or I don't think we really need that. We don't really need one for the password. I just would need an error for the username in case the username is not in the database. So this is the only backend validation that I'm going to do via PHP. Okay, but I will need the same error division, but I'm not going to really have any error message from PHP to display in it. So this is just going to be an emptiness check, an emptiness validation check that is going to be raised or displayed via JavaScript. All right, so let's just go there and add the connection. I'm going to make a partial script in just a minute, but for the time being, let us have it like that if this is what's confusing you. So I'm just going to include from the config the db connect.php. Once you have the connection, let's start having the errors. So I'm just going to go to that sign up, include, and have my stuff. These are the essential variables. So I'm just going to have an error for the username, and this is it. I don't have any error. Actually, I don't really need this to be an associative array. This is just one this is just one value, so I can just use error username like that, and this is going to be enough, right? We don't really have multiple values. It's just one error that I'm talking about here. All right, so I'm just going to say that this is going to be error username, and this is oh, we are in the sign up page. I didn't notice that. I didn't notice that at all. I want to copy this in the login.php. Okay, so user error username, like that, and I'm going to place this error username like that, and we will take the values from we have only two input fields. It's the username and the password, so I just want this and that. We really have an email, and we don't really have a hashed password, so these are going to be ready. And I'm going to be having the flags for the password and the username, and this is it, and we're ready to check or perform PHP validation, right? But before that, let's just set up the JavaScript validation, right? So let me just go to the JavaScript code. So the form validation for the sign up, I'm just going to copy all of it. Why do I have this open? Let me just close this add here. I'm going to create a file. What did I name it? Let me just create a file that is called form. In the login, I've included form validation login, right? So I'm just going to create the file first. So form validation login.javascript, and paste all of the form validation from the sign up page. Now what we need to grab is the following. We need to grab the username, we need to grab the password. We don't really have an email in this login page, right? So it's just an input field of username and the password. These are the main input fields, right? So this is having the name of password. We don't really have this. That's password. We don't really have a mail. And we want to grab the same, the form, not the same form, but the form that has the same ID from before. And I want to grab the hidden input fields, which have the username valid, and this is supposed to be password valid. All right. I hope that we haven't missed anything, so I'm just going to say these are the things that I'm going to grab. Okay, and I'm going to get the value for them and the password here. So I'm going to call this password value, and I don't really need the email or the second one, so I'm just going to say you can't leave this username field empty, and you can't leave this password empty, and I'm going to pass the password value, and this is the password element that we have grabbed. And I'm going to modify this a little bit. So here we don't really have this double password checking, since we don't really have a password and a retype password field. It's just a one password field. So what we can do is the following. If things were empty, then do that. If things weren't empty, then go to our old ways, and we don't really need any of these checking, right? So this is going to do the trick for us. Okay, else let me just check that. All right, this is it. But yeah, I think, yeah, that's literally it. Yeah. Okay, so these are closing correctly. So let's go and try this in the login page. Refresh. Now let's, oh, we forgot the submit button. All right, now we need to add the submit button, which is going to be having the value of login, and I'm going to say that this is going to have the name of login as well, right? And refresh. This is submit. Refresh. Now try to log in. The JavaScript is working, obviously. So JavaScript is working here. All right, now we want to do the PHP part now, right? So what we want to do is the following. We want to check if the button is pressed, so the post request is triggered. Post, why is it doing that? Is triggered, and the button that has the name of login is pressed. And the first thing that we need to do is that check is if the PHP flags are ready, and by that I mean the hidden input fields, are they ready? So is this value has some valid value, is this has a valid value, If these are having values, then this is the time for us to grab the actual value from the main input fields. So check hidden inputs if ready, and by ready I mean non-empty. So we're just going to say if the value that is inside the username valid, right, was not empty, then just grab the username's input field value. So I'm just going to say grab that value in the username field and place it in the username variable that we have created from before. Alright, now let's check, since we want to make sure that this guy is inside the database. Now we are reversing the condition. In the sign up, we needed to make sure that the username is not in the database in order for him to be able to sign up. But for the login, we need to make sure that this user is inside the database. So the second layer of validation, which is basically check if user exists. So I'm going to say the SQL query is going to be having select everything from the table that I've made that is called accounts, where the username column is equal to the value username, like so. And we want to make sure to send that query to the database. So my SQLi query, come on, right, send that query to the database, and we need to send the connection first. So I'm just going to send the connection here. This is going to be some result that is not in a readable or accessible or indexable format. So I want to make sure that the returned result actually having some values. It's not an empty string. It has some rows inside of it. It has some associative arrays inside of it, right? So my SQLi num rows, right? And I'm going to send that result. Now what we want to do is the following. We want to make sure if the returned result was greater than 0, then this means that user exists. Hooray, right? So we would do the following. If the user exists, we are just going to transform that result, which is not in an indexable format, to be something that we can access, which is an associative array. So I'm just going to say MySQLi fetch assoc, and I'm going to send that result, and I'm going to save that in a variable that is called row, like that. Okay, no, that's not JavaScript, I'm sorry. We are going to save it in a variable called row. Okay, alright, before I continue, I thought about something really fun. What if I will do the validation? Let's say that I'm going to perform the validation once there is a value here and there is a value there. Then the first validation is going to be on the username, if this guy is inside the database, and the second validation is going to be is inside the is in the password field, right? So if I found that this guy is inside the database, now perform the validation on the password. Is the password matching for that guy that we found inside the database or not, right? So to do that, I'm just going to rearrange the stuff that I've just been making here. So I'm just going to take all of this checking logic here in the database, and I'm going to finish this part here. So I'm just going to say that this if statement is going to check if the username is valid, meaning that there is a value inside the username field, right? And I'm going to do another one for the empty and post check if password valid. If this has something, then grab password, and I'm going to set it into the password value or variable, and I'm going to give it a post of password, like that. Alright, okay, and this is it. And we need to set things valid. I think we can skip this one. That's not really important for us. We can use these, right? So if these have values, right, we can just say if these have values, then send to the database now. Okay, so now we can say check, this is where we check username in DB or not, right? So I'm going to say if I found that there's something in the username and there was something in the password variable, we are going to paste all of the code from before. So I'm just going to paste this. So first of all, let's say that check non-empty. So this is the check on non-empty, which is basically this if statement. All right, for both of them, for password and username. If non-empty, now check if the user exists or not. So here we said if the user exists, then this is a good thing. Return this into a row. All right. Okay. So if we grab that row, if we have that row of the user, this means that essentially we have this row. Let's say that we have grabbed this username, right? So this row is with us. So I can access the username, I can access the ID, I can access the email, the password, and so on. Okay, so that means that I can access from this row the password. So let me just grab the password and let's see if it is equal to what the user have entered in the password field or not, right? So this is going to be check if password match or not, right? And this is where the dehashing function is going to come. Obviously the user is not going to write all of this in order just to log in, right? So we're going to dehash whatever value that is returned in the row that we have just grabbed or returned from the database here, right? So the password that is inside the row, it has this value. So we want to dehash it. So we're going to say that there is a function that is called password verify, right? And you pass the password function, or you pass the actual value that you grabbed from the username from the input field, right? So the value that you grabbed from this input field, I'm just going to take it and I'm going to compare it to whatever password or hashed password value that this user had under his entry in the database inside the password column, right? So I'm going to grab from that associative array, I'm going to grab the password value. So I'm just going to grab this part, password. All right, let's hope that we didn't make any misspelling here. All right, so if this returned true, then this means that the password are matching, so we can log him in, right? So log the user in, and this is where we are going to use the sessions, but I'm going to make this in another variable, in another video. Okay, so if he's logged in, I'm just going to echo here something like you are logged in. We're going to take this away in just a minute when we introduce sessions, right? Else then password is not matching, so we should perform or give him some kind of an error, right? Maybe that was a mistake. So I need the same associative array from before, so I'm just going to say that this is going to be errors. I'm going to copy it from the sign up. Yeah, so I just need the password like that. So yeah, and I'm going to edit this here since we need the errors. I'm going to use the error here, right? And I'm going to use the same error for the password. So if the password is not matching, we are just going to update the errors for the key of password under it. Password, all right? So we will say that password is incorrect, right? But this is if we have found him in the database. So in this if statement, right, what if he wasn't in the database? So this means that he is not in the database, right? So we need to update the error for the username on this part. So I'm just going to say the error for the username is going to be username does not exist. All right, so this error needs to be shown in the division. Okay, here for, we need to echo this. Okay, it needs to show in the division under the password. Okay, so let's try this. Okay, so this is the JavaScript doing its work. Now let's try, oh, that's the login. This is JavaScript doing its work. Now let's try to enter something that is not inside the database. So let's say Germana. Now let's enter, I don't know, let's enter something. It wouldn't really matter, but let's enter anything in the password. So username does not exist. Let's enter something that is inside the database. So Omar Shindi, and let's have the password wrong. So password is incorrect. Now Omar Shindi, and enter the correct password. You are logged in. So we are done with the login system. What we need to do is that if we enter something incorrectly, like that, we need to make sure that the value persists, the error persists here. So we see what we have done, what the user did type wrong, so he can just avoid it next time. Okay, so we can do this easily by echoing whatever value that the user has entered. What did we have? We had username and password. All right, so username, and echo here the password. It wouldn't really matter, but let's just echo the password as well. And let's have all of the logic of the login page, or let me just transform all of the logic from the login page into another script when we are done with the sessions. Okay, so this is the login.